Go ahead and get started, guys, because we have so little time together to learn a whole lot of stuff. Okay, and I don't know a whole lot about where you guys come from. I just know that you're in EPICS as a course. So if we could super quick just go around, if you could just tell me what year you are and what your major is, so I kind of have an idea of your background.
Alexis, freshman marketing.
Okay.
Rebecca, freshman, first year engineering.
All right.
Brenna, senior, multidisciplinary engineering, and I'm pre-med.
Okay, wow.
Cole, first year engineering and freshman.
Okay.
Curtis, first year in computer science.
I'm Kieran, I'm a junior in mechanical engineering.
Okay,
Jamie, I'm a sophomore in biological engineering.
great.
Simon, double E, junior.
Nick, I'm a freshman in first year.
Al, I'm a senior in electrical engineering.
I'm Nate, I'm a senior in electrical engineering also.
Junji, biomedical engineering, junior.
Okay.
Katie, senior in industrial engineering.
I'm Nikita, and I'm a senior in materials engineering. Hannah, I'm a senior in natural resources and environmental science.
Oh,
Mateo, I'm a senior in Navy. I'm Austin, I'm a junior in mechanical engineering.
okay.
I'm Michelle, I'm a sophomore in Ed.
Okay.
I'm Jade, I'm a freshman in FYE.
I'm Kelly, and I'm a freshman in first year engineering.
Okay. And are you guys like sitting in teams or just sitting with your friends or just sitting with whoever had a seat next to them? Okay. So nobody's on a team together and all of the above? Okay. All right. Well, it gives me a good idea of if anybody was in education and had an education background, I might pull you up here to help me out. But I'm going to be with you for 2 of the 4 sessions. Okay, there's 4 sessions about learning, and my name is Lynn Bryan. I am a professor. I direct the center called Center for Advancing the Teaching and Learning of STEM. It's a center that is between the College of Education and the College of Science, and I have a joint appointment as a professor in Curriculum and Instruction, which is in the College of Education, and Physics and Astronomy, which is your neighbor down the street. I used to be a physics teacher many years ago and eventually moved my way into academia. I actually went to Purdue for my doctorate and became a professor somewhere else and came back about 12 years later and helped to get Catalyst up and going. And so we work with Bill Oakes. He was part of a team a long time ago that was conceptualizing a new program on campus in STEM integration, so teaching and learning of math, science, technology, and or engineering in K-12 classrooms. And probably many of you went to a high school that didn't have any kind of an engineering course. You might have had like an industrial arts course. These days we're starting to see more and more engineering in classrooms, but it's still few and far between, particularly in Indiana. And so we have a certificate now that if you're in teaching, you can take some coursework. One class is EPICS, so that you can learn about engineering and how to teach engineering, how to teach your discipline through engineering. So for example, I'm a physics teacher. Teaching engineering design through physics is not a very difficult thing. We do a lot of types of projects, but we don't necessarily emphasize the design aspect, the design process, and frame it in terms of engineering. And so there's a much more purposeful attempt to do that in integrated STEM. Okay? You're not going to probably need to take notes today. I'm not going to lecture to you guys. I've got basically 100 minutes to tell you about everything you need to know about learning, so when you do your EPICS projects, you're able to design it with a learner in mind. So I'm just going to take the key highlights here, and hopefully after these 2 sessions with me, you'll take away some ideas that'll help you when you're thinking about your different projects. How do you design these with the learner in mind, so that it's not just something they go and get entertained by, but they actually learn? And there might be some of you that want to collect some data from your projects to see what are children, particularly if yours is a K-12 oriented project, what are they taking away from the project that you have designed. Okay? So what I'm going to start out with is just a short activity. And we may not finish everything today, but like I said, I'm with you for 2 weeks here. Today we're going to kind of do an overview of learning, like what do you consider when you think about learning, how do students learn, and in particular, I'm interested in how students learn science. And then next week we'll focus a little more on the younger grades, K through 6. Maybe a little middle school. The week after that, we'll look at learning STEM in older grades, and then the 4th week will be assessment and just ideas and some things to consider when you want to learn what students have learned from whatever learning experience you have designed. Okay? And so relax today. I don't care what your major is, if you can or can't do any of the activities that I'm about to give you. I want you to think about why a teacher would give a student this task and what you're doing as students and things like that. And then we're going to watch a short video, and hopefully there's time to begin a discussion. I'll give you some suggested readings, but I'm not going to give you homework. Some suggested readings that are downloadable online. They're books that are actually really good books. If you just want to know in one book how students learn, you can get it online. And I'm just going to ask that you choose one of those and read the first chapter by the time we get together next week. So I didn't think there'd be a whole lot of students here. I actually estimated we didn't find out how many would be in here. I thought, well, maybe 10 people are really interested in how we learn. So I'm going to have you pair up, or you can even work in threes. But this is an activity. It's actually a full-blown lesson, but I don't have time to do the full-blown lesson, that I have done for many years. And depending on the age group, I've done it with kids as young as 2nd grade, and I did it with my seniors in physics when I was a high school teacher. But how I teach it, obviously, is going to be really different. And I'm just going to have you do a little sort of snippet of this. And I'm going to ask if somebody might help me. I only have about 15 of these, so about every 2 to 3 people. I really want you to have a chance to. Thank you so much. Okay, and so one thing I tell kids, especially the young kids, is that when something's in a plastic bag in my classroom, it means you don't open it, okay? Because what's the first thing you want to do when you see a bunch of materials? You just want to dive in and start playing with it, right? Thank you. Thanks. And I'm not going to make you do everything that I normally do in a classroom. Again, this is an abridged version. It's really to get a flavor. It's really to give you something that, a little bit of food to be able to have a discussion later on. I'm going to ask that you share this. I think I might only have 12 of these. I really... And I can make more. I can send these if somebody wants any of the materials today. If you want the PowerPoint, I'm happy to, put it on Blackboard or email it to you or Dropbox, whatever works for you. But what I would do with the kids is I would have them first, without opening their bags, without touching the materials or doing anything, I'd have them open to the first page here. And this is just an example of any kind of science instruction I might do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them, what do you think? And why do you think I ask them, what do you think? I might ask them, what do you think you'll do to get the battery, the bulb, and the wire put together to light? Now, are you going to answer my question about the battery, bulb, and wire, or why I'm asking that? No, why am I asking that question? Why am I asking that question? Why don't I just give a lecture on it?
Well, it's good to understand like a starting point, and also good to encourage creativity.
Yeah.
In case they just think of something on their own, it's going to help them understand it a lot better if they produce it.
Absolutely, yeah. When you walk into classes, are you like a blank slate? Do you just not know nothing? And you just sit there and whatever the professor says, it just goes right in and you write it down and you now know it? No? An empty vessel, right? So one of the reasons is that students do have ideas, okay? You want them to use those ideas to be creative, all right? So a lot of my instruction starts with something that elicits, what do you know? But it's not just for me as the teacher. It's one thing that you'll need to take into consideration if you ever teach, or if you're ever designing a learning experience. You will want to take into consideration, what would a kid know at that age? When I teach a high school level physics course, my ideas about what a high schooler should know is a lot different than if I'm teaching a graduate level course of what they should know, or a first grade class about what they should know, okay? And so what I'm going to have you do for a second here, and some of you, if you're electrical engineers, this is like, oh, this is like, you know, I'm playing with blocks or something, and some of you have never been given a bulb, a battery, a wire, so I have no expectation that you would know how to put it together. But what I want you to do, and I'm not going to look and I'm not going to grade, but I want you to draw 2 or 3 ideas of how you think, okay? And if you're too embarrassed to draw, you really don't want to, you don't have to, but at least think in your mind how you might put those 3 things together to get the battery, bulb, and wire to light the bulb, okay? How would you put those 3 things together? And sometimes the kids ask, especially the young ones, can I, you know, shave off some of the coating in the middle? And you can't, okay? And you're only given 1 wire. All right, so I'm just going to give you a few minutes to think about that. If you want to write it down, I have my students, they have to write it down, okay, because I have a different goal for teaching students about electricity. I'm teaching you more about learning, and I don't want you to be all caught up in whether you don't or do know how to put a bulb and a battery and a wire together, okay? So take just a minute, think about it, maybe share it with a friend. Not supposed to do it yet, that's right. Hi. Oh, no problem, yeah. How many'd like another minute or so?
It's like wire.
You ready to move on?
Or wire battery.
Okay, so this over here on the board, these are, if you didn't have any ideas, I want you to try at least 2. And of course, the next step is going to be to try your ideas, right? I wouldn't have you write them down if you weren't going to try them out. But these are 2 pretty common ideas that students have that may or may not work, okay? You'll find out in a minute. But why might a student draw something like this? What from their personal experience might have them draw something like this?
You only have 1 wire going from the wall to the lamp.
Absolutely. So when you turn on a lamp, there's only 1 wire that gets plugged in, and you screw it in one place, okay? So that sort of models that same idea, okay? Why might a student do something like this one? Where might their ideas have come for this one? That one might be a little harder. It's not necessarily an analog to something in real life. I'm sorry?
Making a series out of it, you think?
Okay.
Say that.
So why do you think that they would, why would you think they would make it a series like that?
You have a constant path going.
Okay.
But I think you're still short in this.
So they might know that you have to have a complete circle, or they might even know circuit, that you have to have a complete circuit. Okay, now it might be questionable where things are located, but they've got this idea that there's something that's complete. Other kids might draw that because they know I've got 2 parts of the battery, and when I put it in a flashlight or something like that, something's always touching each end, so I probably have to put a wire down here and then I connect it somehow to the bulb. Okay, so in about 2 minutes here, I'm going to give you some time to try out some different ways. I don't want you to try out the one on the left, okay? If you want to try it out, okay, you'll get a little like burn or shock or something if you do it too long. When little kids find out about that, then you're walking around and you see they're starting to put paper in there to see if they can do something. They get really rascally. But if you want to try it, just do it very quickly. I don't want you to drain my batteries and stuff by playing around with things that will basically be a short circuit. Okay? But everybody that wants to can try the second one. If it doesn't work, try to modify it so it can work. Okay? And so just go at it for a couple of minutes and then I'll be back with you. And I'm happy to give any hints if you need some hints. Okay, so I want you guys to find all 4 ways, okay? Our electrical engineers, there's 4 ways. Okay, go for it. No. Just those 3 materials. But you can only use those 3 parts right now.
It's part of your body. You gotta use your body.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so then you can do it the wrong way. It's not an LED, so there's no diode characteristics of it.
Blame the batteries.
1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, 3, 4. There's 4.
Like the wire has to touch like.
What are you going into? I can't do it. So they'll make you this with like.
That's just connecting.
Are you in right now?
Okay, only because we don't have a lot of time. Only because we don't have a lot of time. I'm going to show you guys a little process that I go through with students who can't figure it out and sometimes get frustrated. Usually once 1 or 2 kids in my classes, whether they're seniors or second graders, once they get it, somebody gets it, the word gets around and you realize that there's probably one little tiny thing that isn't super obvious that will get your bulb to light, okay? But my intervening like this really intervenes in the learning process. You really want students to expend the mental energy. Okay? When you make a learning experience, you don't want to just tell them everything and show them everything. I could have given you a picture of how one works and then asked you to do another variation of that and a third variation, etc. But you really probably would not have learned the essentials of what you needed to learn that will last with you. I guarantee probably my students from 10 years ago could still pick up a battery bulb and wire and get it to light because they have been the ones that expended the mental energy. Okay, so you have minds of your own. You come to the learning situation with ideas, beliefs, experiences, things that you're conscious of, things that you're unconscious of that influence how you take in new information. Okay, it's easiest when somebody's in front delivering the information and you write it down, and then you go later on and try to struggle through that. But that's not the best way to, in my view, design a learning experience, is to keep telling people. But that's pretty much the model that we have, right? It's pretty resistant, and we have a lot of inertia in our teaching methods. Because it takes a lot of time to do this. and it takes a lot of preparation, it takes materials, but most of all, it really takes a lot of time. And it's really kind of hard to assess. What you're doing today, I probably wouldn't, if I had to give you a test, I would not probably give you a multiple choice test, because that wouldn't really tell me what I needed to know about what you learned about electricity. But a lot of kids will get to the point where they're drawing, or they're putting together the one where there's one end, it doesn't matter where the wire is. And they're pretty aware that there's two parts of a wire and there's two parts of the battery, but they probably have never taken a bulb and just looked at like how it's made and even the bigger bulb. I like to use these as opposed to the kinds that are in our flashlights, the kind that you can take out that are in our flashlights, because it does look like a big light bulb that we might put in a lamp. But if you've never looked at this, sometime go online and see if you can find a picture of a cut of a lamp, or if you want to crush the light and look down inside there. What you'll notice is that one of the wires of the filament goes down to the bottom. And you see that black part on the bottom there? That has a wire that is connected, soldered to the bottom right there. And then there's another part of that filament, the other side, that's connected to the side. And once I tell kids who are struggling that, oh, well, there's two parts of the wire, two parts of the battery, that's right. And what if I told you there's two parts to the bulb? And then we talk about how the bulb is put together. Once they know there's two parts of the bulb, then they realize that if I have everything put together such that there's one continuous path and nothing is being touched more than once with something, my light bulb will light. Okay? And so if you haven't been able to get this, I'm going to leave these. You can play around with it for the rest of the time. As a matter of fact, you can take it with you if you'd like. We've got lots of these. But one of the design, just because a lot of you are in engineering design stuff, when young children do this, we have a whole series circuits, parallel circuits, all that. And then they have a design project where they have to design an alarm for their locker that usually they're like in 5th, 6th grade, that a 5th or 6th grader would be able to disable, okay, the user would be able to disable it easily and be able to put it back when they've gotten whatever they want out of their locker. So it's not so hard to make a locker alarm, but what's hard for them is to figure out how to get a circuit such that they can turn it on and off. And it turns on when you open a locker as opposed to when you close a circuit. So for those kids, it's a little counterintuitive. So it's a nice little design task that they do. And it was inspired by my kid. She, I don't know how long it's been since you've been in 5th and 6th grade, but they tend to share their locker combinations with one another, especially girls. And they have gum or mints or whatever in their locker. And she came home upset because all the school year, her friends have been getting in her locker and like giving out her mints and candy. And so one of the solutions is then make a locker alarm. And so that inspired our little design task for circuits. So if you turn to the next page, I've had you draw what you think. I would have kids draw what did you find out, but not just draw what you got right. What do you think that I do with the previous page and this page? How do you think I connect the two? Anybody? What were your ideas and what you found out? How do you think I connect those with the kids?
Showing how a physical demonstration can teach them rather than just listening to a lecture.
No.
Still not getting it right.
And I just pound them and say, you got it wrong, you got it wrong. No, I have them see, what did you do that you can revise to get what you got on the next page? Okay, don't just leave it out, oh, you got these wrong. It feels horrible, doesn't it? Most of us, that's our experience. You take a test or you do a lab and they just mark it wrong, right? Do you ever have anybody sit down with you and say, how do you revise this to get it correct? Okay, that's part of the learn. How many of you, if somebody doesn't do that, go back to where you live and you're studying, go back and look at your test and see what did you do wrong and why did you do wrong and how could you revise that to get it correct, or go talk to your professor to figure out what you didn't understand. Anybody do that? That's good. All right? That's part of learning too. And that's one part that we like to emphasize more in the work that we're doing that's not emphasized usually at all, is that you can learn from failure. You can learn from mistakes, and it's okay. And we're trying to change that culture, that instead of looking at an answer as just that's it, that's all you get, one chance, is how do you revise it? So it's really important to have your ideas down to begin with so that you can be able to analyze those and see what do you need to change in order to make it work. Okay? That's part of the learning process. It's not being told the answer and you just know it and you can do it forever. It's thinking through a process. And sometimes that's not going to work, and you have a chance to revise. Then you can turn to the next page if you like. One thing that I have K through 12 students do is I actually ask them to write instructions to somebody like their mom or their little brother or sister on how to put together a battery, a bulb, and a wire to get the bulb to light. And it's not as easy as it sounds. But then the next thing we go into is we use an application. Okay, so part of the learning process is using your information. This part we're not going to do, but if you're ever interested, we just have these simple boards where you can put in 2 batteries and a bulb, or 2 bulbs and 1 battery. And we have a task where instead of telling them, put them so that the batteries are in series and the batteries are in parallel, or the bulbs are in series or the bulbs are in parallel, we'll say, put 2 bulbs in and 1 battery and find a way to get both bulbs to light, but they're dimmer than what you did the previous day, which is the activity you did with 1 battery, bulb, and wire. And then find a way where you can get both bulbs to light, but they're the same brightness. Okay? Because if I said, here, could you put together battery and 2 bulbs in series for me, please? And then I give you a schematic and say, could you put them in parallel for me, please? And you have no idea what you're doing, or you don't even have anything to think about why you might do that. But when they start focusing on the characteristics of the bulbs, they start to maybe understand why sometimes they're dim and why sometimes they're bright. Okay? Anybody have any general questions, or I guess questions about the activity, or questions about how to put your bulb together with the battery and wire? Anything right now? Yes?
And you have my question. How do you get the students to focus less on trying to use all the materials given and completing the task, like both, instead choosing that they only use 1 battery for the 2 bulbs?
So we tell them 1 battery with the 2 bulbs, but what we do is we give them like 8 wires, and they don't need 8 wires. Okay, and so some of them do feel like they've just got to use all these wires. You know, so as a teacher, I'm walking around and I'm just seeing their decision making, and I suggest, why don't you start 1 wire at a time and tell me, why did you put this wire here? Okay, what do you think this one's going to do? And I just go through this small questioning sort of scaffolding process to help them think about how they're putting it together rather than just going for it. You know, and that's kind of our tendency a lot of time to design stuff. When we put materials out for the kids to do the locker, they'll just take everything, you know, and even if you give them a limit of $5 or what, they're not. So we have them design first what they're going to do, and that's what the what do you think will help with. When you ask them what do you think, it forces them to put their ideas down. They don't always take it seriously, but a lot of them will think about, okay, what do I need to make this work? That's a good question. Any other questions? Gosh, time goes by so quick. Okay, we are going to watch, nope. Let's see if I can do it this way. For some reason it's not a live link right now. And I'm not the most technologically savvy.